sensational, I think, to be able to do something I've wanted to do for a long time, but have shied away from doing it for many reasons, and that is to talk about some of the interesting things that have happened to me. I don't know how important they might be, but they are interesting to me, and I thought I'd like to at least reminisce over some of the strangeness in my life. And God knows I've had a lot of it.
Well, I know a little bit about some of it, and it has been phenomenally fascinating with you, even as a little boy. It started. I mean, these things are just remarkable. So we had an email, and two of them, I think, from people who are looking very much forward to hearing some of your strange events. So let's go to it.
Okay, well, I think I'd like to start off by just giving you some background about my family. When I was growing up as a kid, my mom used to tell me from time to time, we'd sit and talk about the family, and I would ask her about my grandfather and about the family, and as a kid, and she would always tell me that you are from the Carroll family, and she would always spell it C-A-R-R-O-L-L, Carroll family. And she said, your family and ancestry goes back to Virginia and Washington, D.C., the John Carroll family. And so, of course, that and $2 will get you a cup of coffee. I have no idea what she's talking about. And so it wasn't, and I remember her talking about that quite a few times. And she even talked with Senator Claude Pepper on radio about the Carroll family. And I remember Senator Claude Pepper talking about the Carroll family and my mom and her family. So I know there was some validity to it because I heard a congressman or a senator agreeing with her. And so it wasn't until later in life, back in the year, I guess, 90s and mid-90s, when I came across a book called Rulers of Evil by Tupper Saucy. Rulers of Evil. And it's on my website under recommended materials. You can go get it there. But in the book, Tupper Saucy talks about the founding of the United States of America. And he talks about the family that was very, very instrumental was called the Carroll family.
Double R, double L.
Right, and he said that the Carroll family was if I'm remembering this correctly, as a Jesuit Catholic family that were very wealthy at the founding of this country, very wealthy family. And so when George Washington and the founding fathers needed a place to set up the central government, the federal government, he brought out in his book that it was the Carroll family who donated the property, which today we refer to as Washington, D.C.
Oh, so back then,
yeah, Washington, D.C. was owned by the Carroll family, and it was donated to George Washington and the founding fathers as a donation. And then when I read that, I thought, wow, that's what my mom was telling me about the Carroll family. Then later on, the movie came out, National Treasure. And in the beginning of the movie, National Treasure, it's about the Carroll family. And as a matter of fact, one of the very first scenes in the movie is Martin Landau, that's a sensational actor. Martin Landau is in a horse carriage, and they're getting him out of town. And it's a stormy night, and beneath him on the screen it says the Carroll, John Carroll of the Carroll family. And that was in National Treasure, the very opening scenes in National Treasure. And so I was shocked again. There it is in movies, the Carroll family. And so the bottom line is that for whatever it's worth, I just thought, I'd like to tell you, I'd like for somebody to know, not that's going to do me any good, but that my family, the Carroll family from Washington, D.C. and Virginia area, was my ancestor. So in point of fact, I've often mused that if I had the money, I would like to hire a really, really high-class law firm and sue the flying hell out of Washington, D.C. and demand my property back. My family gave it to the people of America, not to the fascist, murdering criminals that run our country today. I would like my property back and get all of that crap off of my property. So,
that's really fascinating, Jordan. Amazing that your family donated Washington, D.C., the property, to the government of these now rotten United States.
Yeah, and my mom used to tell me that all the time. And like I said, it wasn't until I was much older, but I did remember she talked on the radio one time on ABC Radio in Los Angeles when Senator Claude Pepper, who was the highest-ranking Democrat at that time, happened to be on the air, and she called and was talking to him, and I was in the other room listening to the conversation, and I remember Senator Claude Pepper talking about, yes, the Carroll family, and your family was the Carroll family, and et cetera, et cetera. And he went on talking about the importance of that name and what my family had done. And so I just thought that was interesting. I'd like for like I said, I don't know where it could go, but I just would like for the world to know it was my family that owned the property that we call today Washington, D.C.
Let me ask you a question or two about this. This is fascinating. The Masonic and Luciferian impact that was laid on the land that your family donated to this country in the beginning.
The Carroll family was a Jesuit Catholic family. They were Jesuit, and I'm not Catholic or Jesuit, but I was born Catholic. But the mere fact that it was a Jesuit family, and and from what I gathered, it was a very wealthy family, and they had a lot of land, and they donated a large tract of land, to the government.
Yeah, it is. Who do you think laid out the grid, and it is a very specific grid of intent, the geography of the city of Washington, D.C.? Who do you think did that? Jesuits?
Well, I'm sure the Jesuits, because they're very, very crafty people. They're very much involved in government and finance, high finance, international banking, world law, all of the real power centers of the world today. Jesuits dominate. And so I'm sure that there's a real story here that I'm bringing out at the last minute before I leave this world. But at least it gives somebody opportunity to look into it for me. And I would not be a bit surprised if a lot of my ancestry has been wiped off, wiped out, so that there's
erased, of course, yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me any. But I just remember when my mom and her sister and when my aunts would come over, my mom's sister, they would talk about the Carroll family. And I think I said my mom had two uncles who lived in my hometown, and they were both appointed to the federal bench. One was Bob Carroll, and the other was Frank Carroll. And so I know, if nothing else, I do remember going as a little kid with my mom to see two federal judges in town. I didn't know what it was all about, but I was going to see her uncles who were the Carrolls. So I know that that's legitimate, and I know that the Carroll family were involved with the founding of this country. As a matter of fact, I think John Carroll signed the Declaration of Independence. And he was the only Catholic to do so. And it was either the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence that Carroll signed. And so his name's on it, John Carroll. And so I just thought that was of value, even though it doesn't mean anything for me, but at least it is of value to know that, what my ancestry is all about. But anyway.
Here's, hold on. Charles Carroll, C-A-R-R-O-L-L, of Carrollton.
Yes.
R-R-L-L. signatory of the Declaration of Independence.
Yes.
He was elected to the Continental Congress on July 4th, 1776, and remained a delegate until 1778. How's that?
That's exactly right. That's what my mom was telling me. Yeah. So,
good job. Well, you know, and when you think about it, Jordan, and look at the actual blackness that is Washington, D.C., it's the center of Luciferian satanic evil on the planet. That argument can be made.
Of that, there is no doubt to anyone with an IQ of over 40 that Washington, D.C. is the center for all of the demonic depravity and filth that's going on the inhabited earth. And it's my country. I was concerned about America because I grew up in a country that I loved and my family worked in. Right. And all of my family worked hard to be a part of America, and only to find out that it's been taken over by criminals, liars, thieves. Well, there's
world Zionism. Charles Carroll never would have imagined when he signed the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776, that the net result would be what we're looking at right now.
You're right. Exactly right. But just keep in mind, though, that family was a Catholic Jesuit family.
Yeah. Well, that underscores the arguments that the Jesuits are maybe at the top.
Yeah, well, that's what I think. That's what I choose to believe based on my 56 years of looking into all of this. But then on the other hand, it's always amazed me that this is what's always been in my blood. As a child, I was always interested in the dark side of things, and the political, and asking the right questions to find out what's really going on. Right. And then I come to find out later on in life, when it's too late, of my ancestry. But I do think it's interesting. I've spent my whole life pursuing knowledge of politics and religion, and the real conspiracies behind all of this. So that, like I said, $2 will get you a cup of coffee. But anyway, I just wanted to $2 will get you a cup of coffee. But anyway, I just wanted to establish that story.
That's a great opener. All right, Maestro.
And so in 1989, now I've had so many strange experiences even as a child, but we'll get into some of those things later. But I think a nice place to start would be in 1989 in Los Angeles. I went to a Whole Life Expo, which our dear friend Paul Andrews was putting on a masterful show called the Whole Life Expo. Right. And I only had a few bucks on me, but I was going to see. I didn't know what it was all about, but it looked interesting. So I went to this big conference at the Hilton Hotel, the Airport Hilton. And my God, there must have been 20,000 people there. It was an enormous event. And I'm walking down the aisles, and of course all of the vendors all have big tables. They're all in a line, and they got big signs on each table. And I came across a table of a psychic, and his picture was up on the wall, and his name was Kenny Kingston.
Oh,
and,
sure.
Kenny Kingston was supposedly referred to as a psychic to the stars.
Kenny was on the program here several times.
Yeah, Kenny was fascinating. I used to do shows with him. Sometimes
really?
I used to do warm-up for him.
No kidding.
I'd come on and talk about the occult world and spirituality, et cetera, and then I would introduce the speaker, Kenny Kingston. So I was very close friends with Kenny. But anyway, when I first met him, I saw his picture, and he had all of these pictures on the wall of him with famous people. I mean, the Queen Mum and,
the top
and all of the royalty of Europe. And he was said to be the psychic to the stars. Well, at that time, I didn't know what a psychic was. I wasn't interested, but I was interested in the fact that this man has been seen in the company of some of the most powerful people in the world, and whatever he's doing, he must be doing good at it because he's with all these important people. So I thought, I want to see what he's doing. And so I came up to the table, and there was a sign that said, for $10, you buy a little audio tape or a little pamphlet that he wrote about spirituality, etc. And he would give you a 1-minute complimentary reading to show you what he can do, to give you a psychic reading. And so I thought that sounded interesting. It's only $10. So I got the pamphlet and I was reading it. Well, the way it worked is that there were so many people in the aisles that if you're going to talk to Kenny, you have to line up next to the table, single file, and you go to the end of the table. The next person to see him will go to the end of the table, and Kenny was facing away from the aisle, facing away from the people. So you have to go around and then turn around and now facing him and talk with him. And so I was reading the pamphlet, and it didn't occur to me that I was holding up the line until I looked up and I saw that the person ahead of me had already gone and talked to Kenny and left, and I was holding up the line. And so the moment I saw that, Kenny Kingston turned around. He had a swivel chair. He turned around to see if there was anybody else in line, and our eyes met. And the first thing he said to me, I'd never seen him before. I had no idea who he was or what he could do or what he was doing. And when our eyes met, he pointed at me very deliberately, and he said, "You've come back. They have brought you back." And I said, "Are you talking to me?" He said, "Yes, you have come back." And I said, "I don't understand." He said, "You are going to expose religion, the demonic depravity of religion and government. You're going to expose conspiracies around the world, and you're going to be very famous doing that because they have brought you back to do that." And I was amazed what he was talking about. And he said, "They have brought you back." And then he said, "You are going to make some of the most powerful enemies a man can make in this world. But at the same time, you will attract the attention of some extraordinarily powerful people who will know who you are, and they will know what you are doing here, and they will protect you. But you will never know who your protectors are. You will never know who your enemies are. But the people who know who you are and want to protect you so you can do your job," he said, "they are going to put a circle around you." Which means out on the street, wherever you go in this world, whatever you do, there's a circle that's been put around you by some extraordinarily powerful people in this world that are protecting you, and that circle simply means nobody to touch you. Nobody. And he says, so they're doing this, but you don't know who they are, but they know who you are, and they are protecting you so that you can do what you have to do. So that was one of my first entries into the world of psychics, and I had other experiences with Kenny, but that was just the beginning to awaken.
Kenny was a very nice man. I always enjoyed being. His energy was very kind, caring, and sprightly almost. He was interesting.
I love Kenny, and I used to, like I said, I've done shows with Kenny and introduced him at the different conferences, and he and I would speak on the stage together. So, but anyway, that was one of my beginnings. And then second, I was asked to speak at a conference, and I've spoken at so many conferences and conventions and seminars all around the world. But I was asked back in, I think it's about 1995, that I was asked by the conference people to speak and be a keynote speaker in Pasadena. And then they said to me, we were sitting in the lobby, they said to me, what are you going to need for your presentation? Do you need a blackboard, or do you need projectors, or what is it you're going to need to do your presentation? And I said to them, look, all I want is just a table. I want a table and a chair, period. I want to be able to sit before an audience like a teacher with all of my documents and papers and everything laid out on the table. And so I just want to talk to the audience without any glitz, without any glamour, and talk with them about the kind of research I've been doing. And so the guy who owned the conference said, he said, okay, here's what I'll do. I'm going to put a video camera on you and on stage, and I'm going to have the cameraman sit in a bar stool behind you, with the camera behind you, so that when you pick up the piece of paper and talk about the document, hold it up so that he can zoom in on it, because he's going to be right there over your shoulder the whole time. So hold it up so he can zoom in on it, and we'll have closed-circuit TV so everybody will be able to read it together. And so that next week it came out fine. It came out great. And so at the end of the evening, when we were all going home, the guy who was sitting on the stage with me, the cameraman, he came over and he said, Jordan, my wife and I would like to have you come to dinner tonight. Would you come over? And I said, of course. So I went. I followed them home, and they lived in Pasadena, a very nice condo upstairs. And so his wife was in the kitchen fixing dinner, and he and I were sitting in the front room gabbing about UFOs and everything else. And we just sitting there talking. And then after a little bit, the wife comes out and says to him in front of me, she said, have you told him yet? And it was kind of shocking to me. And he said to her, no, I wasn't going to tell him until after dinner. And I said, tell me what? And he said, well, I got an ulterior motive for inviting you here. It's something I have to tell you. He said, one summer, I was thumbing my way after school was out. I was thumbing my way to go visit my cousin. And he says, I'm out on the highway thumbing a ride, and this old man in a beat-up, dirty, filthy pickup truck that looked about as old as he was. And he said, but at least he stopped and gave me a ride. So he said, when I got in, the cab smelled terrible. He was smoking cigarettes, pipes, all kinds of, anything that would burn, he was smoking it. And he said, it stunk terrible. He was an old man, but at least it's a ride. And he says, as we were driving off, this old man began telling me everything about me and my family that nobody would know. He was telling me about my dad's work and his partners and my girlfriend and my mother, and he said there was nothing he didn't know about us exactly correct. And he said, I was astonished that this old man knows so much about me and my family, and he's absolutely correct on everything. And he said, when he finally let me out, as I was getting out, he told me, he said, everything I've told you up to now was to get your attention and to entertain you. And he said, before you go, I'm going to tell you something important now. He said, after you're 50 years old, you're going to be on the other side of this country. And one morning, you're going to be in a big hotel and a big meeting room with lots of people, and you're going to be sitting on a very tall chair on the stage with a man who's sitting at a table on the stage, and you're going to be with a camera. And that camera, he said, the old man told him, that camera does not exist right now, but it will exist then. And you will be operating that camera over his shoulder so that whenever he picks up a piece of paper, the people in the audience will be able to see it. And he says, so when that happens, you tell that man, I put him there. It was my idea for him to sit at that table in that chair with you sitting behind him with a camera. I put him there. So you tell him that. So he won't misunderstand and think it was his idea.
Right.
You tell him, I put him there. And when he told me that so visibly shook me that I got up and left. I went outside and walked down the street, and I was really afraid. And he came out. My friend came out and walked with me for a little bit. And he said, I just had to tell you that because the old man told me to tell you that he put you in where you were this morning. He put you there, and it's his will, not yours. So I don't know what that means. I have no idea, and I'm not verifying anything. You need to understand this. I am not verifying anything. I'm just telling you what happened. Yeah. Because so many times, I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about when I say I'm not verifying. You know, I may have I've had it happen sometimes. Somebody will come up to me, some lady will come up and say, Jordan, I just think you're an angel. And I said, well, thank you. And whatever that means. So I think, then later on, I tell somebody on the radio show, I said, well, I had a lady come up to me a few days ago, and she thought I was an angel. Immediately, the next day, the web is alive and jumping. Jordan Maxwell said he was an angel. And Jordan Maxwell must be a lunacy. He must be a loon, goofy. He said he's an angel. And the point of fact, I'm just amazed at what people will do to you when you tell them the truth. And the point was, I didn't say I was an angel. I merely said that this was what a young lady told me. And so this is why I'm saying, again, what I'm telling you tonight and what I'll tell you in the future. I am not verifying anything. I'm just telling you what happened. So anyway, that was startling to me.
These are very, very interesting markers along the roadway. You've got so many of them.
Yeah, no doubt about it. The other thing I was going to tell you about is that my dear friend Bob Leeds. Bob was an important man in Hollywood, in the motion picture business. Bob used to come over and visit me all the time. And so he called me one morning and said, I want to take you to breakfast this morning. It was a Saturday morning. And so he came over and he said, any place you want to go this morning, I'm treating you. Any place you want to go, you tell me and we'll go have breakfast. I said, oh, okay. So we got in the car and I told him, I said, I think I want to go to Escondido. Well, Escondido is a little small town north of San Diego. And so he said, well, I was thinking about something really nice in downtown San Diego. And I said, well, I'm thinking in Escondido. And he said, well, there's nothing in Escondido. And so I said to him, as we were getting in the car, you said you would go wherever I wanted to go. And he said, yes. I said, well, that's where I want to go, Escondido. So he said, okay, we'll go to Escondido. There's nothing there, but we'll go. So it's about a 20-minute drive north to Escondido. So while we're driving, he and I got to talking about people that we admired in our life and friends that we've had when we were growing up and what they may be doing today or if they're even alive today. And I told him about a couple of people that I wish I could see that I went to school with and were very close to. And so we were just reminiscing about dear friends that we'd like to see and I've lost track of. And he was then telling me about the two people in his life that was so important to him that he had lost contact with and didn't know anything where they were at all. And he said it was one of them was an old Native American Indian that he grew up knowing and was kind of like a second father to him.
Right.
And he said, and the other one is a contractor, building contractor that I went to school with, and we hung out together and was roommates in school. And he said, I would love to see him, but nobody I know that knew them knows anything about them. Nobody knows where the old man is or the contractor friend of mine. Nobody's ever heard from them again. And I would give anything if I could see them again. So we get into Escondido, and there's nothing there. And so